There's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you stop belonging to yourself. It doesn't announce itself. There's no alarm. One day you realize the thoughts in your head aren't entirely yours anymore. Someone else planted them there. And the most disturbing part? You defended them as if they were your own creation. This isn't just about cults. This is about the manipulation blueprint hidden inside every controlling relationship, every toxic workplace, every charismatic leader who turned followers into prisoners of their own psychology. And once you see the pattern, you'll recognize it everywhere. We like to believe manipulation is obvious, that we'd see it coming, that the people who fall into cults, abusive relationships, or authoritarian movements are somehow different from us, weaker, more gullible, less intelligent. But the research tells a different story. Studies in behavioral psychology reveal that susceptibility to manipulation has nothing to do with intelligence. It has everything to do with timing, emotional state, and the precise exploitation of universal human needs. Every single day, these patterns play out in miniature. The friend who gradually isolates you from others while claiming they're protecting you. The boss who alternates between praise and criticism until you're desperate for their approval. The partner who rewrites your memories until you question your own perception of reality. These aren't isolated incidents. They're variations of the same manipulation blueprint, a formula refined over centuries, weaponized by those who understand human behavior better than their victims understand themselves. What makes this pattern so dangerous isn't its complexity, it's its simplicity. And once you understand the stages, you'll never be blind to them again. The blueprint operates in 5 distinct stages. Each one builds on the last, creating a psychological architecture that's nearly impossible to escape once fully constructed. This isn't theory. This is documented, repeatable, and disturbingly effective. Stage 1. The love bomb. Every manipulation begins with an answer. Not just any answer, the exact answer you've been searching for. The manipulator doesn't start by taking. They start by giving you something you didn't even know you were missing. Unconditional acceptance, a sense of belonging, purpose, validation. They study you, consciously or unconsciously, and identify the specific hunger in your psychology. Then they become the only source of food. In cult psychology, this is called love bombing. But it's not limited to religious movements. It's the new romantic partner who texts you constantly, who mirrors your values perfectly, who seems to understand you in ways no one else ever has. It's the charismatic manager who singles you out, tells you you're special, that you have potential no one else recognized. It's the friend who showers you with attention exactly when you're most vulnerable. The psychological mechanism here is simple but powerful. Intermittent reinforcement of emotional rewards. Research from behavioral psychology shows that unpredictable rewards create stronger psychological bonds than consistent ones. The manipulator doesn't just give you attention, they give you the perfect amount at the perfect moment, creating a neurological pattern of craving and relief that mirrors addiction. You're not being loved, you're being studied, and the data collected in this phase will be used as a weapon in every phase that follows. Stage 2. The isolation. Once the bond is established, the walls start going up, but they're built so slowly, so subtly, that you don't notice you're being enclosed. The manipulator begins to reframe your other relationships as threats, not directly at first. They plant seeds. I noticed how your friend talked over you at dinner. Do they always dismiss you like that? Your family doesn't really understand you the way I do. Those people at work are just jealous of what we have. Each statement contains a grain of possible truth, which makes it difficult to reject outright. And mixed with the intense validation from stage 1, you begin to see your world through the manipulator's eyes. Slowly, contact with others decreases. Not because you were forced, but because you were convinced. You isolated yourself, believing it was your own choice. The cognitive bias at work here is called confirmation bias, merged with social proof distortion. Once the manipulator frames others as unreliable or harmful, you unconsciously begin collecting evidence that supports this view while dismissing contradictory information. Your circle shrinks. Your reality becomes increasingly defined by a single source. Isolation isn't about physical distance. It's about becoming psychologically dependent on one source for your sense of reality. When there's only one voice in your head besides your own, it becomes impossible to tell them apart. Stage 3. The dependency. With external validation sources eliminated, the manipulator becomes your entire emotional economy. They are simultaneously the cause of your pain and the solution to it. This is where the pattern becomes a trap. The manipulator begins to introduce unpredictability into the relationship. The warmth from stage 1 appears and disappears without clear reason. You're praised, then criticized. Included, then excluded. The person who made you feel more understood than ever now seems to misunderstand you constantly. But here's the twist. They've already convinced you that everyone else misunderstands you more. This creates what psychologists call a trauma bond, a relationship where the intensity of both positive and negative experiences creates a pathological attachment stronger than healthy love ever could. Research into Stockholm Syndrome and abusive relationship dynamics reveals the same pattern. The victim becomes biochemically addicted to the cycles of tension and release. You start changing yourself, trying to return to that initial perfect connection. You monitor your behavior constantly. You second-guess your perceptions. You apologize for things you didn't do. This isn't weakness. This is a rational response to an irrational situation. Your subconscious mind is trying to solve an equation that has no solution because the manipulator keeps changing the variables. The dependency is complete when you need their approval to feel okay about yourself, when their version of events feels more real than your own memories. When the thought of leaving creates more anxiety than the thought of staying. Stage 4. The identity erosion. Something subtle but catastrophic happens in this stage. Your sense of self begins to dissolve, not all at once, piece by piece, memory by memory, preference by preference. The manipulator doesn't just control your actions anymore. They control the narrative of who you are. They rewrite your history. You've always been too sensitive. You've never been good at making decisions. Before you met me, you were lost. These statements, repeated enough times in an isolated environment, become incorporated into your self-concept. This is gaslighting in its purest form, the systematic destruction of your ability to trust your own perception and memory. Neuroscience research shows that memories are reconstructed each time we recall them, making them vulnerable to suggestion. A skilled manipulator exploits this, subtly altering details of shared experiences until you genuinely can't remember what actually happened. Your own mind becomes unreliable to you. But identity erosion goes deeper than memory. It attacks your values, your preferences, your intuition. You stop knowing what you actually think about things because you've been trained to check with the manipulator first. Your internal compass doesn't just malfunction, it disappears entirely. You become a hollow version of yourself, filled only with the manipulator's programming. The most insidious part? You may still appear functional to outsiders. You go to work, you maintain surface-level social interactions. But inside, there's a growing void where your authentic self used to be. Stage 5. The exploitation. This is the end game. With your identity compromised, your social connections severed, and your reality defined by a single source, you become a tool for the manipulator's purposes. This could be financial, sexual, emotional labor, or simply the narcissistic supply of having complete control over another human being. In cults, This is where members surrender their possessions, cut off their families, or commit acts they would have found unthinkable before. In relationships, this is where victims stay despite obvious abuse, defend their abusers to concerned friends, or sacrifice their own well-being completely. The pattern has reached its full architecture. You're not just controlled, you're complicit in your own control. You defend the very system that's destroying you because to acknowledge the manipulation would mean confronting how much of yourself you've lost. The cognitive dissonance would be unbearable. Behavioral psychology calls this learned helplessness. When someone has been conditioned to believe escape is impossible, they stop trying even when escape becomes available. But it's more than helplessness. It's a complete reorganization of your psychological operating system. The manipulator has installed themselves as the administrator. So what's actually happening beneath all these stages? What's the hidden mechanism that makes this pattern so devastatingly effective? It comes down to three fundamental aspects of human psychology that manipulators exploit with surgical precision. First, the need for coherence. Human beings are meaning-making machines. Our brains are wired to create coherent narratives about our experiences, even when the experiences themselves are contradictory or chaotic. We have an almost desperate need for things to make sense. Manipulators exploit this by presenting themselves as the key to coherence. They offer an explanation for your pain, your confusion, your sense that something has always been missing. Once you accept their framework for understanding reality, every subsequent piece of information gets filtered through that lens. This is confirmation bias working at an architectural level, not just about small beliefs, but about the entire structure of meaning in your life. Second, the authority bypass. Research into obedience and authority, particularly the famous Milgram experiments, revealed something deeply disturbing about human nature. When we perceive someone as a legitimate authority, we're capable of actions that violate our own moral code. We essentially outsource our ethical decision-making to the authority figure. Manipulators don't demand authority, they cultivate it. Through the love-bombing phase, they establish themselves as uniquely qualified to guide you. Through the isolation phase, they eliminate competing authorities. By the time you're dependent, questioning them feels like questioning reality itself. They've become the authority on you. They understand you better than you understand yourself, or so the programming suggests. Third, the sunk cost trap. The deeper you go into the pattern, the harder it becomes to leave, not despite what you've invested, but because of it. Every compromise you made, every boundary you surrendered, every piece of yourself you reshaped, acknowledging the manipulation means acknowledging that all of it was for nothing, that you were fooled, that you harmed yourself. The ego protection mechanisms of our subconscious mind would rather maintain the illusion than face that reality. So we dig deeper, invest more, commit further. This is the sunk cost fallacy weaponized against our own liberation. The manipulator doesn't even need to keep us trapped at this point. We trap ourselves to avoid the pain of admitting we were trapped. These three mechanisms, the need for coherence, the authority bypass, and the sunk cost trap, create a psychological prison that requires no physical bars. The locks are made of our own cognitive architecture. But here's the question that haunts researchers of manipulation. Why does this pattern work across cultures, across centuries, across wildly different contexts? Why do humans keep falling into the same trap? The answer is both simple and profound. These patterns exploit needs that are fundamental to human survival and well-being. The need for belonging, for meaning, for guidance, for love. These aren't weaknesses. They're features of our social neurobiology that allowed humans to thrive in groups, to transmit knowledge, to build civilizations. Manipulators succeed because they offer counterfeit versions of genuine human needs. The love bombing mimics authentic connection. The isolation mimics protective loyalty. The dependency mimics interdependence. the identity erosion mimics transformation and growth. By the time you realize you're consuming poison, you've already developed a taste for it. And modern life has made us more vulnerable, not less. Social media creates artificial validation loops that train our brains to crave external approval. Economic instability creates existential anxiety that makes authoritarian certainty appealing. The fragmentation of traditional communities creates a hunger for belonging that makes us less discerning about where we find it. Cultural emphasis on individualism leaves us isolated and desperate for connection. The pattern repeats because the vulnerabilities it exploits are renewable. Every generation has people in transitional moments: grief, divorce, job loss, identity crisis. Every era has those who feel unseen, misunderstood, searching for something they can't quite name. The manipulation blueprint doesn't need to evolve because human psychology hasn't evolved. We're still running ancient social software in a modern environment, and those who understand the code can rewrite our behavior. So how do you recognize the pattern? More importantly, how do you break it? Recognition requires calibrating your early warning system. The key is noticing the pattern in its earliest stages, before dependency takes hold. Here are the specific signals. Watch for speed of intimacy. Genuine connection builds gradually. If someone seems to understand you perfectly within days or weeks, if they're sharing profound vulnerabilities and demanding yours in return immediately, this is typically not connection. This is assessment. They're gathering data for later use. Notice who gets uncomfortable. If multiple people in your life, especially people with no connection to each other, express concern about the same relationship, that's a signal. Manipulators appear charming to those they're not targeting, but those who genuinely care about you will sense the distortion, even if they can't articulate exactly what's wrong. Track your own consistency. Are you changing opinions, dropping commitments, or altering your behavior in ways that surprise you? Not growth, that's different, but sudden shifts that feel like betrayals of your previous self? That's often the beginning of identity erosion. Monitor your cognitive freedom. Try this experiment. Express a minor disagreement with the person in question. Not a fight, just a different preference or perspective. Does the conversation proceed normally? Or is there a subtle punishment, withdrawal of warmth, a wounded reaction, an implied threat to the connection? Healthy relationships can hold disagreement. Manipulative ones require absolute alignment. Breaking the pattern is more complex, especially if you're already past the early stages. But it begins with a single act of defiance, trusting your own perception again. Document your experiences. Write down conversations, incidents, your feelings. Not for anyone else, but to create a record your memory can't be gaslit away from. When someone tells you something didn't happen, you have evidence. Not to show them, they'll dismiss it. For yourself, reconnect with your pre-manipulation network even if it feels uncomfortable. The people the manipulator isolated you from aren't perfect, but their existence provides alternative reference points for reality. You need to hear voices besides the one in your head and the one that put it there. Practice small acts of autonomy. Make minor decisions without consulting the manipulator. Notice what you feel. If there's fear, anxiety, or guilt over normal independence, that's the programming revealing itself. Each small act of self-determination is a rebellion against the pattern. Understand that leaving, if that's necessary, will feel like dying. Because in a sense, it is. The self that was constructed in the manipulation will dissolve. You'll have to rebuild from whatever authentic foundation remains. This is terrifying. It's also the only path to freedom. And here's what no one tells you. Even after you escape the specific manipulator, the pattern may try to repeat. You'll be drawn to familiar dynamics because your psychology was rewired around them. This isn't failure, it's the residue of trauma. Breaking the pattern fully means not just leaving the relationship, but dismantling the internal structures that made you vulnerable to it. That's longer, harder work that often requires external support. The goal isn't to become cynical or closed off. It's to develop a discernment that can distinguish between genuine connection and skilled imitation. To trust yourself enough that when someone tries to become your only source of reality, you recognize it as suffocation, not love. Remember that moment I described at the beginning? When you realize the thoughts in your head aren't entirely yours anymore? Here's the truth they don't want you to understand. That moment isn't the end, it's the beginning of a choice. The manipulation blueprint is powerful because it's invisible until it's complete. But once you see the pattern, once you recognize the stages, the mechanisms, the repeating cycles, you gain something manipulators fear more than anything: informed resistance. Every cult leader, every abuser, every authoritarian system depends on followers not understanding how the trick is done. The blueprint only works in darkness. Awareness is the light that causes the entire architecture to cast shadows, to reveal its structure. You are not broken for falling into these patterns. You're human. Your need for connection, meaning, and belonging isn't a flaw in your design. It's the very thing that makes you capable of love, of community, of building something larger than yourself. The tragedy is that these beautiful, essential parts of our psychology can be turned against us. But now you know the stages. You understand the mechanisms. You can see the pattern. And that changes everything. Because the manipulation blueprint isn't actually a secret. It's just a truth that keeps being forgotten, then remembered, then forgotten again. Each person who recognizes it, who refuses to participate in their own imprisonment, breaks the cycle, not just for themselves, but for everyone in their orbit. The patterns that shape our lives aren't destiny. They're just loops waiting to be interrupted, waiting for someone to see them clearly enough to step outside. Will you be the one who stops the cycle? Or will you pass the pattern along, invisible and intact, to whoever comes next?